listener, and welcome to the Locker Room podcast by Daily Sports Science. We have the three amigos back together for the 40th episode of the Locker Room podcast. Hello, Ross.
You're right, Kears. How you doing?
Very well. You're happy, Ross, after your famous win for QPR under 15s versus Tottenham?
It's not about winning, Kears. It's about development. Remember that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Hi, Joe.
Well, Ciaran, how's the form? Well, Ross.
Very good.
Joe,
very good. Okay, we'll catch.
Kears, just quickly, Joe nearly didn't make it today.
What happened?
He was worried. He had the jab, so he's showing his age. But he had the jab today or yesterday, Joe. You can tell us, but he was worried that you wouldn't make it.
Yeah, still feeling a wee bit groggy now, Ross. To be honest, I think I got the AstraZeneca one, so British made, so only the best for me.
Yeah. If the blood clot happens during the episode, we'll get someone round.
Definitely.
Joe, the important thing is British made and not UK made. Okay, there's an important distinction there that Ross probably isn't even aware about, but that's good news anyway. Okay, well anyway, before we get into the trials and tribulations of Joe's COVID vaccine and previous period off work with it, we just want to give you some information about today's sponsors. Ripped are back involved with us, which is brilliant, Cormac and the lads. So Ripped is a software platform built for performance coaches and organizations with easy to use programming tools and training load, well-being and nutrition monitoring via the Ripped app. All of your coaching tools are in one place. Streamlining your coaching, making it more accessible for your clients and athletes, and providing you with the insights you need to optimize performance. To find out more, head over to www.ripped.app and use the code LOCKERROOM to get your 2-month free trial. So that's Locker Room, all one word, all capitals, to get your 2-month free trial. So thanks very much to Ripped once again. Joe, we'll come on to you first, just before we get into the information. I was listening on my Apple podcast, and lo and behold, there I heard your sweet down voice on a rival podcast episode. What's going on?
Yeah, Ciaran, I was on a load of balls with John Fagan there. It's a Down podcast, and it's great for Down club and county football because they go through all the club games. So yeah, it's a rival podcast to us. So I'm giving it a shout out there, Ciaran. I think you were on it. I actually think you were on it yourself, were you?
I might have been on it before we launched the Locker Room podcast. Okay, so
that's where you made your name.
Yeah, you'll be dragged in front of the CEO, and we'll have a word about. And was this as well? You said that I got sacked from London GA. I was disgusted when I heard that.
Yeah, I knew you were going to call me out on that one. Ciaran.
The truth hurts, Joe. The truth hurts.
Well, we were all sacked.
Well, that's true. Ross, at my wedding, which you didn't turn up for back in Ireland, during the middle of the night, Joe started saying to me about how, we could do this. Why don't we bring in, another psychologist? We can do this questionnaire. And what about if we try this tactics with the London senior football team? And I said, Joe, you do know that we've already been sacked from that job. Joe started using a few expletives anyway and said, "Oh, yeah, I forgot. We're gone, aren't we? We're gone." So
too many drinks in. Denial is the first stage.
Yeah, exactly. Joe was in denial. Anyway, Joe, tell us about your football ebook that you launched on dailysportscience.com.
Yeah, Ciaran, it was actually an idea I got from Barry Milan and yourself as well, because Barry had released a hurling one and it was all game based. So the one that I released was it's called Gaelic Practices and Games. So there are 33 practices and games. I think 16 of each, plus another one. And the thing is, you practice something. A drill, and then you bring that drill into a game-based scenario. So you're applying the knowledge of what you learned in the drill, and you're bringing it into game-based, where you have decision making and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's over there on the website there, Ciaran. It's good for club managers coming back very soon. They're coming back. just to get a few ideas. And, they can always adapt those different drills and those games to suit their own needs.
Yeah, and it's been brilliant. It's been very popular, hasn't it? It's like €12 over on the website. It's dailysportscience.com/products. And I think it's going on towards 200 people have already purchased it. And it's been really popular, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very popular, Ciaran. Nearly 200 sales. And hopefully, we get a few more, and it's all about spreading information. And as I said, hopefully with club teams back from the 10th of May, we've got light at the end of the tunnel, and we've got games again, and we've got boys playing games, and we've boys arguing with each other, we've got fights going on, back to a bit of normality, Ciaran.
Exactly. Joe, you do know I've got 2 letters from HMRC here this morning, so I'm going to redirect them down to you. Okay, so they'll probably come knocking on your door any one of these days. So, but don't worry, everything is UK incorporated now, Daily Sports Science. So we're all good. Don't worry. My wife is a tax lawyer, so we make sure everything is working okay.
It's tax avoidance, not tax evasion. So
tax planning, Joe. Tax planning. Well, Ross, you've released the 6 counties training planner, and just about to release the 26 counties. Actually, by the time this podcast goes out, it should be up on the website.
Yeah, never. The GA never makes things easy for us, does it, in terms of the planners? So we had the lockdown one where we had the different codes last year, and now we've got obviously the 6 counties ones that we released 2 weeks ago, and 26 county ones coming up now. And I think we'll talk about the content in this episode, but it's going to be even more important now, as we've seen in our jobs, and Joe being back with his club and us being involved with QPR Kids, how essential it is to really plan what you're doing over the next weeks and really avoid mass injuries, but also preparing players for the game, because they've got such a short window to prepare to compete. So it's going to be a really important time frame for coaches and support staff.
Yeah, cool. So that's up on the products page as well. Last thing to mention before we jump into the content of the chat is we'll give some more information in the future, Ross, but we'll just kind of tease out a little bit of information now on the online certificate in sports performance coaching that we're going to be releasing over the coming months. We won't put a definite timescale, but we're all ready. The modules are done, the videoing, the presentations, the learning management system is up and running. So it's just a case of kind of pulling it all together and releasing it now, isn't it?
Yeah, like talking to you the other day, Kiers, and talking to Joe, who's coming on board and helping us out as well. Like the resource that's in there, the 8 different modules by 6 different people, experts in their field. We've got ourselves on there, Stevie Poacher, but then people that are in professional sports, nutritionists that's involved with us, John Murphy. So we've got a lot of good people there, and I think that's going to provide really good information for people. So really excited about that, actually.
Yeah, no, it should be brilliant. Okay, so we've titled the talk. We'll keep it relatively short and sweet because there's plenty of information out there, but we just wanted to kind of summarize the important factors to keep in mind when you're returning to play now for the GA season. Joe, you just quickly had, just to confirm the dates and everything like that with us. So the 6 counties are back, the clubs are returning. Do you want to just run through them just so everybody?
Yeah. Well, as you say, Ciaran, the 6 counties have been back for a few weeks. County teams have also been back for a few weeks, and juveniles have been back for a few weeks. But when this podcast goes out, club teams will be back yesterday, which is Monday, the 10th of May. So all adult sports can resume from Monday, the 10th of May. I think for 2 weeks, it's non-contact from the 10th of May. And then you've got 2 more weeks, which are contact. And that brings you up to June the 7th. That's when teams can start to play challenge matches. Also, that's without spectators. Also, inter-county challenge games have already started. I was just actually looking at, someone put it on Twitter last night, the RF account. They were watching the Dublin Monaghan having a friendly match. So they're already having friendly matches.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, Ciaran, the 2 managers of those teams have been, suspended for their shenanigans.
Yes. Yeah.
You remember. So club and county will run concurrently, until August, and then the club championship for most counties will probably start as soon as their county is chucked out of the championship. obviously the lesser counties will be able to start their county championships much sooner. But you've obviously got the likes of Mayo, Dublin, Kerry, Tyrone, who probably be starting, August their club. So it's a long season for the club player,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Will clubs start into their championship very very beginning of August? It's difficult to know. Yeah, actually, I was going to say about people going away on holidays, but then there's not going to be holidays. So maybe we will see club championship, right throughout August, which will be something new, won't it? Like generally, I always kind of thought the club would really get up and running into September, really, regardless of when you're knocked out, your county's knocked out at the All Irelands. There's a little bit of a lull over the summer months usually, but it might be different this year then.
Yeah, well, hopefully, Ciaran, because you have that July. I know we have the July fortnight in the 6 counties, and it does take a nosedive in the summer. But obviously, in the summer, that's when the best weather is. So for clubs to start their championships and their big games in August, September, which is a great month for weather, that's brilliant for the club player, I think. But then it goes back to clubs managing their players and injuries and so on, because there will be a lot of league games for players, and the county players won't be playing with their clubs.
No.
So
I don't think they'll be involved with their clubs at all, will they? No. Like other years you're dipping in and out, you're doing a little bit of training, you've got remember previously your 2 championship games are in April. I don't see anything now. I think if you're with county, you're with county, and then you'll return for club championship, and club league will continue on as normal throughout the summer months, which in some ways actually gives everyone a little bit of knowledge in, like, okay, this is what is happening. They can plan ahead, and a bit of certainty is what I'm looking for. That they know that, right, the county players are not involved, and then as soon as the county is done, then they can come back and get reintegrated with the team. So in ways, I mean, this is probably the split season that they're going to be going ahead with anyway after COVID, Joe.
Absolutely, Ciaran, and I think it's the right thing to do, and it also gives players who aren't county players for those big club teams, it gives them an opportunity as well, and it gives the managers an opportunity to experiment without the county players and see what system suits them. And as you said, it allows club managers to plan without their county players. And nothing worse if you're a club manager and you're thinking, well, will my county players be available for this game? Will be available for that game? Do we have to change our training sessions because the county players are coming back? Do we have to change our tactics because we've got county players back? So it makes them tactically assured as well.
I wonder, will you see potentially you could have the club teams who don't have any county players, and that there are many clubs like that who are good teams. Like maybe they'll get a benefit because from the beginning of the season right through as normal, the whole way from league to championship, they'll have the same set of players and they'll just work with that group of players. I know they have that anyway in other seasons, but it might just, it might help them even more this year, maybe, that they've just that core group of players to work with. And look, it'll be an interesting one. So from Monday the 10th, Joe, what you're saying is 2 weeks of non-contact training for club teams, adult club teams, then 2 weeks of contact, and then you can play friendly games. And then I presume it's up to each county when they schedule in the league campaigns then from that. But we expect probably mid-June or so, end of June.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would expect that start to happen from mid-June. And, if teams are allowed to play those challenge games from June the 7th, then they should play those challenge games from June the 7th to get ready for the league.
Yeah.
We would expect them to start their games, mid-June.
Yeah.
And you've got June, and then you've got August, June, July, probably for the league. So you have maybe 7-8 weeks for their league campaign. Yeah. And then they would look maybe to start their championship campaigns around August or whenever their teams are the champ.
Yeah, it's quite a nice season in some ways. You know, it's like a condensed season. Nobody was out training in January, getting ready for the club. And I mean, when you mentioned about September being a nice month, I always remember as a player myself with the club, with Horswood, and especially when we went on, the years that we went on to county finals and provincials and all, it was something lovely about just playing in September and into October. And, you know, you've gone through the summer, you're starting to come into the slightly colder nights in October, but you're still involved, you're still playing. And the big games are coming every second weekend or maybe even every weekend. So it's actually a lovely time to be playing during that period. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Ross, after a long period of these players then being away from the game and training on their own and all, with the issue in mind of being non-contact and socially distant training and everything for those first 2 weeks, what do those first few nights of training look like, or what should they look like from your point of view?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, kids. And I actually think the rules of non-contact, or however people are defining it, actually helps a little bit, because I think it can go twofold. I think we need to be really cautious about the amount of football or hurling or sport we put these players straight back into. So the phrase of giving the players something where they're going to want more, letting the players want more, I think it's going to be important. But obviously you've got this opportunity to work on this technical base that maybe they haven't had much of playing in and around with other players. They might have done some individual stuff or kicking back and forth, but technical base with a purpose. So certain principles that you want within your team now. What's your style of play? Are you going to work within a certain shape and you can do some unopposed passing within some shape? Out of possession, you can look at different shadowing things and interceptions. And I think these sort of principles in the first 2 weeks could be something that you really embed into the program. But then on the flip side of that, you're looking at obviously the load, and with the sports science hat on, you're looking at making sure that you don't overcook these players too soon. So I always think it's really easy to go, because if you get into the nitty gritty of specific practices, it can be really hard to quantify, especially at club level. You haven't got GPS, you haven't got these fancy things to monitor. So I would just go by time, just spend the first session, just spend 45 minutes training. That's it. And just give them a little warm up, get a bit of crack, get them socially back in. They're going to be excited to play. Give them 35, 40 minutes of some technical work and principal work, and that's it, and call it. And then the next night you build on. I think that the first 2 weeks, you just got to gradually build up in terms of the training.
Yeah, I think a big impact as well will be what those players were doing during the, let's call it the off season, the COVID period. And if they were doing the work, and also if they're doing it in a smart way, if it was programmed well from the coach or S&C coach, I think that will help them, in their return, because they won't be playing catch up then. So like, for instance, in our off-season programs that we gave to our DSS coaches, we programmed in some aerobic stimulus that, for them to give to their players, some aerobic work, also some speed work, some high-speed running. And like, if you've already covered the bases, when you come back into the team session, then you've got a good foundation then to go back into training. There'll always be a step up going from training on your own into a team setting, but it gives you that nice foundation, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think that will then focus the attention on what you focus on a bit more. So if players come back aerobically really poor, haven't done any program, obviously then you've got to address the elephant in the room and program some aerobic work and work alongside the technical work. But if they come back in aerobically good shape and you do your testing, then you can probably switch the focus a bit more to the football load. And yeah, you sprinkle a bit of fitness work on top of that, but you can start working on the more in-depth football stuff. So it's going to be really important to assess the players like coming in, and then make your judgment on what type of training goes in for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, in the planner that you designed, I think you had an aerobic fitness session, like either the first night or at some stage in the first week. And people don't get scared in that, fitness test on the first day, but it's an aerobic test, isn't it? So like, players, even if they're not fit at all, they just complete the test. It's not like a yo-yo intermittent test or something like that. It's like 4 laps around the pitch or around a smaller pitch. But it gives you a nice kind of baseline, doesn't it, of where your players are then.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can then decide how much you need to focus on getting these players up to speed within the
Yeah.
4 week period for the games. Or like I said, you can just maintain some qualities, improve other areas of fitness, but focus more on the ball work. But I think it's regardless of what shape your players come into, the amount of ball work and technical work don't underestimate the amount of load that puts on the players in terms of twisting, turning. They haven't got that. Their minds you go from playing on your own in twos to now you've got 12, 13 players around you, and there's lots of the pressure that the body goes under. That's why I think always undercook for the first week. Come out the first week with some aerobic stimuli and give them some principles, but undercook it and ready to step up for the second week. I think that's the best advice I'd probably give.
Yeah. No, it's really good. Do you know, I was thinking as well, I quite like the thought of that, give them what they didn't have in the COVID period. So for instance, if they've done a lot of aerobic work, if they've done huge amount of skills work, if they've done a lot of work on their own, obviously, like when you integrate them back into the session, you nearly want to kind of start building up to the other things that they haven't got. So like, I don't think I'd spend, after the socially distanced period or the first 2 weeks, I'm not going to spend loads and loads of time on their skills practice. You're probably going to go, well, right, let's get them set up tactically. Let's have a look at our game plan. Let's give them, little team building games, that they have to work together and stuff like that. I mean, I know after that first 2 weeks is probably, I mean, what's your aim in those first 2 weeks? Is it just to get them to a certain level physically to get back playing, and then you can kind of properly get into the program?
Yeah, I think it's to make sure that they're ready from week 3 to go into a proper program, that is something similar to what you'd have in week 3 of your normal preseason. So you start having opposed possessions and ready to go into some games like small-sided games, large-sided, whatever ones you're going to program. But I think it's also to embed like principles. Fitness-wise, make sure at the end of the 2 weeks they've improved fitness-wise if they need to, if aerobically or however you're going to do it. But just give them some load so that after 2 weeks, it's an intro. They're ready to step up into a program.
Yeah. Something I learned from my time with London was a lot of people traditionally thought that pre-season, you do the fitness work, you work on the skills and everything like that. And then as you come into league and championship, you kind of bring in the game plan and the tactics and everything. Like, I learned from the beginning that start dripping that stuff in. So get them in their shape, get them set up. Like, you're not going to do a whole practice on, team shape, but you're just going to, as you say, Ross, like embed a few good principles about, defensive shape, attacking, penetration, whatever it is. You might start briefly mention about how we like to get set up, how we like to play. If we're on the counter attack, move the ball at speed. If we lose it, transition back fast, get compact into a defensive shape. It's like from day one, you can start putting those, principles in. And the reason I learned it so much with London was that we had such turnover of player that we had these new players every season. So we had no choice. We didn't have time to kind of just return back in and then, we'll deal with the game plan later down the road.
Yeah, 100%. There's a practice I've got in mind, kids, come to my mind, kids. We do it in football. It's called 6s and 7s at QPR, but you can do it with any number of player. And you put your players, however number you've got, into a shape. So if you set your 15 up if you want to and put them into the shape that you want to play, and you just get them passing the ball around and painting patterns around it. And if you've got bodies around then, you get other players shadowing men. So you look at defensive side. If the ball's on one side, so you've got one team just getting some movement, rotation, and trying to create some pitches for them and technical ability as well. And the other team, you've got then shadowing, tucking over when the ball's on one side of the pitch. The sweeper might create better distance in case the ball goes over the centre back's head, whatever. So you start embedding principles. So all unopposed training, it's not just, I'm just going to kick it from around the square. It's okay. We're going to work on the technique and say, when you play the ball into the centre forward, you've got to play it this type of way. But you're also looking at movement off the centre forward. Like you said, there's no wastage now. So at the end of the 2 weeks, they have an idea of how you want to play. You don't have to do a contact phase of play to know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like last year with the project restart planner that we put out for when the GA returned. After the initial lockdown in Ireland, of like it was a fast track. It was a fast track return where we needed to get the players up to speed very, very quickly. Like in this case, actually, I mean, it'll be a funny one because you'll have to get your players ready for league, but in way for club, but in ways, Joe, like league is not the most important in most counties. In some counties, it's not important at all for club players. And then you've got loads of time to get ready for championship, which, as you say, will happen in August. So it'll be interesting. I mean, if I was managing a club team, I would use the league purely to prepare for championship. You know, I wouldn't be worried about kind of fast track and stuff. And I wouldn't treat it as a condensed campaign like it was last year. Remember last year where they only had like, some teams only had a few weeks to get ready for championship. I think this year will be a bit different that way.
Yeah, Ciaran, I agree. And I think that managers need to embed their tactical type of play into those league games so that they can prepare. And most club managers, whether it's a junior team or a senior team, the big thing is the county championship, because those are competitive championship with teams at similar levels. And you know, Ross was talking about the types of games that you can play. We started back here in London. We actually started back about 5-6 weeks ago, and we're still finishing off our championship from last year. We're actually in the semi-final. We've actually a semi-final tomorrow. So one of the first things that we done, we are actually only training once a week, Ciaran. We're only training on the Wednesday night and then a game at the weekend. So we will always meet twice as a group. And I think we might talk about it later, about things that we learned from last year. Yeah. But the big thing that we done was games. And one of the games that we played, the very first session we had back, we played that 3-team transition game. You know that one? I think
yes.
I think you might have got it from Juventus. Was it Juventus or?
I did. It was 99, and 1999. We were over in Ciaran with Mick Wallace, Wexford Youths, playing a soccer tournament under 16s, and we were brought along to Juventus training. And Zinedine Zidane was there, Edgar Davids, Del Piero, Alan Boksic, I think, you know, some top players. And I saw this practice, and I mean, I'm sure lots of teams do it, but that's where I got my inspiration for it. Yeah.
It's brilliant because you know, there's lots of principles you can bring into it. You can bring in defending as a team, defending as a unit, attacking as a unit, organizing yourselves defensively, organizing yourselves attacking wise, and it's quite high intensity type of game. You mightn't cover high speed running in it, but it is short. There are lots of sharp turns in it, and the players love that type of game. So those were the types of games that we were introducing at the beginning. And I think Ross mentioned it earlier. Time as well. You can't waste time. Yeah. You know, we no longer do straight line hand passing drills anymore because we don't think that it benefits the players. There's an opportunity cost there whereby you could be doing something else. You could be doing 2v4 in a small box that we used to do with London that has more outcomes. And as you said as well, players are probably sick to the teeth of doing, technical stuff in that closed environment without decision making.
Yeah.
So for us, it's all games. 80-90% of the session should be with the ball.
Yeah, it's interesting because the next question I was going to ask you, Joe, is just around the aims, or all of us, the aims of the program, and for you specifically, like how do you ensure that the players, fall back in love with the game and they get back up to the pitch? Like, first of all, is it things like that, games, enjoyable trainings and stuff like that, but also, like, have you found this season, any issues around that people don't want to get back out training? There's wariness of getting back after COVID, or they're like mad to get back?
No, Ciaran, they're mad to get back. Yeah. Absolutely mad to get back. And, if you interviewed 100 players and you asked them, would you rather play games and training or would you rather do drills? 99 of them would say they'd rather play games. Yeah. So you're giving the players, what they want. And there's also that social aspect of it, Ciaran. And I would actively encourage, after every game this season, we've been encouraging our players to have a few pints outside, obviously, in the clubhouse, have a few pints with the team. Luckily enough, we've won a few games, so the pints taste much nicer. So, get the players to go out after the game and have a few beers, obviously social distancing and all that type of stuff. But, we talked about playing games.
Yeah.
So you can't play games unless you're fit too.
Yeah.
If players are getting injured, then they won't have the enjoyment of playing the games.
Yeah.
So managers also have to stress the importance of players, and Ross has it in the program, of players carrying out their individual fitness programs.
Yeah.
But if they don't do that, they won't be able to play the games because they're going to get injured. So
I think it's a good point. Do you know COVID might cause the GA, a lot of the club teams and players to realise how important the games are, the GA sport is to that kind of social aspect. And, there is a move towards elitism throughout the GA, even in big clubs now. But it does remind you of that social aspect of like getting out of the house, getting away from the work and just playing a game, having the crack afterwards, having a pint or drink or whatever it is. It's an important one. But Ross, just quickly then, as regards the aims of the program for you, I mean, the fitness work is very, very important, obviously, but like you need to look at the four corner approach, don't you, as regards the technical and the tactical and the psychosocial, and really you need to be, as always at every time, but you need to be dipping into all those corners and making sure that you're getting proper learning outcomes across the four corners.
Yeah, 100%, Kiers. I think what Joe said about the transfer game and those sort of principal style games are brilliant. But for me, I would probably come off them the first week and I would say, right, let's just embed some technique, even with some decision making if we've got movement in front of us and stuff, and just take them out that firing line for the first week. We can, from the second week, we can start dipping in like principles around interceptions and things. And then from the third week, that's when you're saying, right, these principle type games, that's what we want to hit, and that's where our learning to come into. But you're right, I think you've got to have your hat on. You've got to look for the players that have got like psychologically come back and aren't the same player, who's struggling a little bit with their game, maybe because they haven't practiced as much, socially, who's a little bit aloof from the group. So you've got to get all these things into training, and you've got to have a real good, I guess, lens about all these other things. But obviously, technically, physically, you've got that 2 week window to really get your players to a certain level to then go and handle the style of training that Joe's talking about and things like that.
Yeah, Joe, I hope you didn't break the rules. It'll be you, Desi Farrell, and Banty. The three of you, three very high-profile GA coaches.
Absolutely, Ciaran. I wouldn't break any of those types of rules. I'll leave that for other club managers in London to do.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going.
I think Joe's changed now. He's been on a podcast. He's getting a bit. He's got a book out there. I think even the tone now. No straight line hand pass. He's dictating to us now. He's the governor now.
There is a place for it. There is a place for straight line hand passing, by the way, and kick pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a different man. You
don't have to say that, Joe. You stick to your beliefs, mate. Don't worry.
Ross, he's been on podcasts. He's got a book. He's got a girlfriend. He's a different man. It's becoming long term now. Long term girlfriend, exactly.
So I won't miss your wedding, Joe. By the way, I won't miss it.
That was revenge for me missing Ross's wedding, I think.
Put that one out.
I was in Seville, kids. It's either Ireland or Seville. Who could I choose?
Anyway, okay, back to the stuff. Yeah, and you know what, Ross, you touched on it there, just about the kind of group dynamics as well, of like there will be players when they come back they've missed out on quite a long period of training and of football or of hurling or whatever sport, and also like very little social interaction. Like we're all quite lucky in that. I mean, Ross, yours and my work was hardly affected at all during COVID. Like we were still in the office, and Joe, you had kind of time in and out of school, but like there are people who haven't worked in the last year, and you do need to be aware of all your players in different situations, and maybe they don't, there can be financial problems, and Joe, like even thinking of over in London, a lot of the Irish lads as well, away from their families, unable to visit parents, stuff like that. So there's a lot of factors to take in.
There is, Ciaran, and those Zoom meetings that we used to have Zoom meetings, once every few weeks with the team, having a bit of crack. They can only go so far,
Yeah.
So there is a vacuum there, and players coming back, and that's why I say it's important that the manager actively encourages players to come back and get involved in the social side and go out after a few games We've had a few players also that have been experiencing the long COVID, and they're still in those physical symptoms from it, but they're still, they're trying to get themselves back. They're trying to do a little bit of training here and there, so you've got that also to deal with.
I do like the thought, Joe, of now this might be specific to London, but I'm trying to think you could do it with a junior club in Ireland, or maybe if you're training down the country and a lot of your players in Dublin. I quite like to think of that. You train once during the week, get everybody there, get your work done, make sure people commit to that one night, and then obviously you got your game at the weekend. But you're not spreading yourself too thinly of trying to put on like 3 sessions during the week and half the people turn up, half don't. I like that idea actually.
Yeah, 100%. And we've got the problem here, and I'm sure junior clubs in Ireland have the problem. You might have 13 or 14 players on the Tuesday night, and then on the Thursday night you might have a different 14 or 15 players. So your whole tactical plan's out the window completely. If you put one session on the Wednesday, you can do everything you need to do tactically, because all of your players will be there, because it's the only training session that week. And also, Ciaran, it gives 2 full days recovery, which I think club players really, really need, especially when they're coming back, in this environment. And they've got 2 days to recover, and they're then fresh, for the weekend ahead. And the players, feedback from the players as well has been good. And managers might be afraid to try that, because the teams next door might be training twice a week. And if they beat you, then everyone's going to come back to the manager and say, "Oh, the reason why we're getting beaten is because we're only training once a week." Well, it might be that. It might be something completely different. So that's why managers are afraid to try that.
Yeah, exactly.
This is an opportunity to take those types of risks.
Yeah.
Joe, just quickly, Joe, because I think that's really interesting and brave you've taken that step, especially from mine and Kier's world. We come from the full time, everyone trains full time, and that's how it is. Have you found like injury wise, everyone's okay? Are they prepared for the match?
Yeah. Injury wise, compared to last year, we went to Tuesday and Thursday last year. We had more injuries last year compared to what we have this year. I think we've got half the injuries compared to last year, because we're only going one night a week, and they're doing their own individual fitness programs in between, the Monday and the Friday maybe. So we've seen less injuries from the same players as well, Ross. We had exactly the same players. So we're kind of comparing like with like as well.
Joe, if you didn't train at all, then you'd have no injuries.
No,
maybe that's the next step, Ciaran. Don't even event games. No games, no training.
If you don't win the championship this year, Joe, next year just turn up for games, and you might go over the line. No, but it's interesting from all aspects that it seems to be working for you at the minute. Because my thing would be, would you be able to? Are they at risk in the game because they're not training enough? That would be my first thought. But from what you're saying, it's not the case. So
I think
very innovative.
There you go again.
He's changed.
He's changed. No, it's good. It's good. Really, really good. Ross, just thinking, like for club teams then coming back on Monday the 10th, in ways, they've got 6 weeks to prepare for the league game, 5-6 weeks, depending on when they're scheduled. It's quite a nice. It's like a pre-season, isn't it? In football, where your first 2 weeks, they have to be light now and unopposed and everything, which, as you said earlier, can be a good thing. Then they've got 2 weeks of contact. Then they've got a week potentially with a challenge game, and then they might be a week later be into their first league game. So it's quite a nice step-by-step progressive model you could use over that period.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Like, however you're going to quantify it, however you're going to measure it, make sure that week by week in the first few weeks you're progressing things on. So it's not, you're not just going in there and like you don't know what you're giving to players, and players are probably doing too much. I know it's hard to say what's too much, but and then the next week they might dip, and then just make sure that we are gradually building things up. And I think, like, because you can only play the one challenge game potentially for the league game, make sure you, like Joe said, do lots of games in training. Like, prepare them if you can, get a 15v15, and even for 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the end of training, let's do it, because that's the sort of thing that's going to really prepare them for the game. Yeah,
exactly. So you're probably over that period looking to increase intensity, maybe even increase a bit of volume there as well initially, especially after the first 2 weeks to get some work into them. And then in the lead into the first league game, you might kind of come off them a little bit. It'll be interesting in that, like, a lot of teams will treat the league, as preparation as well. So they're not going to be tapering off the players in preparation for that league,
No, and I think what you said was spot on. I think like some of your league game weeks can be your hardest training weeks you've had all season, because you've got to use that as an extension of your pre-season to get ready for the championship. So I don't think you should think about taper until after the league, then build them back up for champ, and then taper just before the champ, and then hopefully then in a position then in the championship season to be able to recover and work on things and not worry too much about fitness for the ones that are playing. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, just a brief word about our sponsors again. So thanks very much to Cormac and all the lads at Ripped. So Cormac has said to me, are you tired of the limitations of using Excel? Well, sometimes, Cormac, and emails to deliver programs. Ripped can help you simplify the creation and delivery of training programs, making it easier for you to provide everything for your clients and athletes' needs, all at your fingertips of your phone or mobile device, with training load, well-being and nutritional monitoring, so you can get the full picture of your clients and athletes' performance. To find out more, guys, head over to www.ripped.app, that's rypt.app, and use the coupon code LOCKERROOM to get your 2 months free trial. So that's LOCKERROOM, all capitals, all one word, that's LOCKERROOM, and you'll get 2 months free trial. So thanks again to the people at Ripped. Just getting some, looking at some of the lessons from last season. Joe, you were obviously involved in the club season here, the GA club season. So what were some of the lessons that you learned from that return back from COVID, the initial lockdown? I'm sure, you've already mentioned a number of them already, but just what are some of the things that you learned and can use then? What have you then implemented this season learning from that, aside from the one session a week?
And no straight line passing.
I think one of the things is kind of rotating our team, proactively before players, do get injured, and a lot of the stuff that we've done this year in comparison to last year, we've done a lot of tactical stuff. We've done a lot of low presses where you're in a good defensive shape. We've worked on that a lot. We've done a couple of things that we looked at when we looked at Dublin and the way Dublin set up, and they had that middle press where everyone's pressing in the middle of the field, and there's a heavy press there. So we've kind of experimented a little bit more this year, and the majority of things, we've tried different tactical approaches. Some of them don't work, but we try ones that have suited the players that we have in place.
Joe, can I ask, was the tactical innovations, was that as a result, or was it a contributing factor due to just the amount of stuff that's available to consume out there now and over the COVID period? And like, even obviously we've done loads of webinars with DSS, and we've listened to Stevie Poacher and Brian Cuthbert and different people, but have people kind of bought into more innovation and more information now?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely, Ciaran, because all of that knowledge and all of that information that everyone has received during the lockdown, they now want to apply that on the field. And that's what we have been doing. And people, coaches and managers now, one of the good things to come out of the lockdown, coaches and managers now are smarter. They have more knowledge because they were able to use the time not on the field to go on to those Zooms, those webinars, our own resources that we have. Lots of people looking at the tactical periodization stuff, which London had, when you were there. And it's just a matter of applying that now. And applying it can be difficult because you have to be able to explain it to the players, and you have to be able to get feedback from the players. And you have to be able to use things like tactical pad, or use your own tactical board that you bring out onto the field with you. Every single training session I go to, the tactical pad, the tactical board is used all the time. And any of the drills any of the games that we're playing and training, I would send it out in the WhatsApp group beforehand so the players understand the type of game that they're playing and why they're playing it. That's very important. So I think, Ciaran, using the knowledge and applying the knowledge from lockdown is ultra important.
Yeah,
that's what we've learned.
Yeah, just on that, Keir, just quickly. So I think it's fantastic that we're learning from everybody, and I think you would agree the sport as itself has gone massive in terms of sharing and things in the last year, and you know your company contributor to that. But I think it's important that we don't just take like what we see in certain teams and just try and imitate that in our own. Like, you've got to assess what players you have, you know, what style you want to play, what division you are. You know, you go and see Dublin. No, you can't just copy Dublin's style. So you've got to see, okay, where are my strengths in my team, and okay, what can work and what innovations can I bring in? Because I think that's important, because I think there'll be loads of ideas. Right, we're going to play a mid block, we're going to play low block, but that might not suit your team. You might need to get pressure higher up the pitch. So I think it's just important to take a step back sometimes, gather all this information and go, right, what can I apply to my group of players, and where are they in their learning pyramid? If they're kids, we don't really want them playing a low block because we want to expose them 1v1. So we just have to take a step back at times and recognize that.
Yeah, I put out a little poll there a couple of days ago up on Twitter, because I was chatting to a few lads in Croke Park just around the future of the GA in general, and one of them made a really good point about like youth GA, that should those games look the same as the adult game, because currently they do. So you have the Go games, which are up to under 12s, which are like small sided, like in professional football, Ross, where it's like 5 aside, 7 aside, you've got different zones, smaller pitches, smaller goals, and it's been a rip-roaring success, even though a lot of clubs and people didn't want it at the beginning. But thankfully now it seems like everybody's bought into it. But the youth aspect actually has kind of been forgotten about. And I know in professional football, like your under 15s will play on a, correct me if I'm wrong, a normal size pitch, normal size goal. Okay, it'll be 80 minutes, isn't it, instead of 90 minutes. Under 14s?
Under 14s, it's the same format. It's 420s, but the pitch is slightly smaller. So it's still 11v11, but it's a relatively smaller pitch.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. But like, so in GA, we don't have that. But even worse in GA, specific to GA, is like, how big are some of the GA pitches, Joe, around Ireland? Like, they're enormous. They're huge. And if you have problems as an adult player age 25 getting around the whole pitch, like, what chance does a 14-year-old have of getting around the pitch properly? And like, you'd see fail games under 14 where there's lobbed goals going in over the keeper's head because they can't, you know, they're jumping up and they can't even reach up towards the crossbar, and you're kind of thinking like, wow, you know, it just hit me when Ross is saying about you can't apply what Dublin do to like a junior team in Wexford. It's an interesting point as well about from adult down to youth sport in ways like it should be a different game. You know, there might be different rules. There definitely should be different dimensions of the pitch, different size goals. You know, it makes sense, I think.
Yeah, I think in other sports, Ciaran, this happens too. I'm not 100% sure about rugby. Do they reduce the size of the pitch for underage teams? But, you know, if you look at even individual sports like tennis, you know, at a certain level, they only play the small courts.
Yeah.
So the reduction in size, you know, has to suit the players at an underage level, and it also, you know, it helps. It gives you more touches if the pitch is smaller, which then improves. You're going to have more opportunities to put yourself in a decision in a position where you have to make a decision. So it helps with decision making. Obviously helps with the technical skills too, because you're under a little bit more pressure. Yeah. So reducing the size of the pitch, that, you know, that has to be done at underage level.
Yeah, I think just quickly, I think if it looks like the adult game, but if you look at it a slightly different way, so if an adult centre forward gets off, I don't know, 12 shots a game, okay, can the player playing in that part of the pitch at under 14, 15 level do that because the size of the pitch and the goal allows them to do that? So you want them to have equal, if not more, opportunities to shoot, defenders to block, midfield players to be able to affect the game in either end of the pitch. If the pitch is too big and everyone's in one corner and then it's a marathon before they get a shot off, Ben, what learning outcomes are you getting there apart from a possession practice?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a really good point. I did an interview during the week, and I was asked by the journalist what was my first ever coaching experience, and actually it was when I was 18. First summer from university, where I did this kind of local rural scheme thing from the GA, where I went in and coached in my own club in Horswood, GA down in Wexford. And the first ever team I was involved with was the under-10 team. And the British Inlines team squad have been announced this week, Joe. Tig Furlong was there. So Tig Furlong was on the first ever team that I coached, under-10. He used to play fullback. He used to get the ball from the goalkeeper, kicked out like 10, 15 meters, get it, and just hop and solo, big massive hop, that would bring him 10 meters with the ball, steamroll every player, stick it in the back of the net, and then trot his way back to full back again. That was the old under-10 way of playing,
Yeah, there's a clip there on YouTube of him actually playing, isn't it?
Right.
He's got a nice left foot.
He's got, he was a good player.
Really.
Yeah. He had more skills than Ross, but he could actually turn and run. And...
You're right. Kiers, you're not claiming part of his success, are you? By the way,
Ross was a left back.
I didn't want to say it. Centre back.
This is where Joe's knowledge. This is where Joe's knowledge goes down. Yeah, sorry.
Centre back.
Centre hard, head it, kick it.
Can he head it? Joe, basically, in a sentence, he could head it, but he couldn't turn.
Right.
Yeah. So
if you just keep heading the ball, you don't need to turn.
Change of direction, not good.
Don't need turn. Okay, Joe. Just interestingly, championship structure for the coming year. So obviously in Intercounty, like it looks like, without every single little detail in front of me, it looks like a rerun of last season's Intercounty Championship, where it's going to be knockout, it's going to be provincial. There's not going to be Super 8s. I got a little bit confused earlier when I was checking, where it was saying the Tailteann Cup is back in and the qualifiers, but as far as we know, that's not happening, isn't it? Not?
No, there's no Tailteann Cup 2021. Ciaran, I think earlier on there, what they were attempting to do was, if they had to go back earlier, was a backdoor system. But now the 2021 All-Ireland Senior Championship, it's a knockout competition from the provincial series forwards. There's not going to be any qualifiers. Unfortunately, London aren't involved, and New York are not either, which is a shame, because you don't want those counties falling backwards, Ciaran, because they need games. They need league games as well, just to keep them up and running. So that was last year.
Yeah, I was briefly chatting to Michael Maher, the London manager, there a couple of weeks ago, and I think on the day it was announced London are not back in, and he was just saying even himself that it's such a difficult situation now, because when you lose basically 2 whole seasons of not being in championship, and a season and a half really of missing out on league, it's going to be very difficult for the likes of London and New York to kind of pick things back up again and reintegrate into it. And you wonder, will the desire be there, or it's hard, you take out 2 seasons worth at that level, very difficult to get back to that level again.
Yeah, it is. It's a kick in the teeth there for them, but I'm sure they'll be okay under Michael, because he's brilliant. The other thing is the ladies as well, Ciaran, the London ladies as well, so it's not just the men. So.
Okay, yeah. Good.
Both,
it's a tricky situation. Joe's he's bought into the women's game as well. Bloody hell, universities, club, Intercounty, women's.
I think, Joe, did you go for London Mayor? I didn't see your name on the list.
No, I didn't. No.
Proud bin face. No, it's an interesting one. I think I've heard a lot of people saying about the Intercounty game last season, about how brilliant the knockout season was, and Cavan winning Ulster, Tipperary winning Munster, but I like. in ways, it's fine for this year. It'll do the job. It'll be a short and condensed season, but please bring in more games rather than less, and give other teams more chances rather than less chances. I think in the future, like last year was brilliant with Tipperary and Cavan, but it came to a kind of a shuddering halt then in the semi-finals quick enough.
It did, Ciaran, yeah. And the good thing again is, from a fan's point of view, ourselves watching the games, it's just brilliant. Some of the games last year were excellent, and some of them went into extra time and all. You had Cork beating Kerry. You, as you say, win the Ulster Championship. Tipperary winning the championship. Yeah. So again, we're going to have upsets because it's a knockout competition.
Yeah.
Who knows who will come through this year? Hopefully, your own county here in Wexford will get a shock.
Let's see.
Final maybe at the Leinster.
Joe, I'm busy building for the future for Kerry, for Wexford. Putting in structure. I can confirm I'm not coming in as a consultant for Kerry. Okay, pure slip of the tongue. I think like very briefly, it was brilliant seeing the excitement of Cork beating Kerry in a knockout game. Everything is on the line. Last minute goal, brilliant, amazing. But like, to me, that just showed the point that like then David Clifford is gone from the competition. Then you see him for one game. Shawnee O'Shea gone. Paul Geaney gone. Like, we want to see these lads more, not less. But anyway, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, Joe, just to see, like, will teams be a bit more reckless in their game plan? Will they be as fit? Maybe not. It'd be quite interesting to see, will there be more mistakes in the county game than normal?
Yeah, probably. But teams have to remember, say, will teams be more reckless? When we say that, does that mean they're not going to have a defensive structure? If you want to win games of football, you have to have a defense. You have to have a defense structure, a defensive setup that you've worked on. You can't just go out and go one-on-one and go, that's how the big teams might get knocked out.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, if you looked at during the week, Chelsea and Man City in the Champions League semi-finals, like, brilliant teams going forward, but wow, they've got a defensive structure in place now, and the building from the back is the most important, a sound defensive structure. Ross, just briefly, from your experiences of QPR this year, I mean, we returned back in August for our season, so had practically a full season as normal, with social distancing rules around the club and stuff. What lessons did you take from, increase in injury, or how would you do things slightly differently, or what kind of lessons could coaches out there now learn from your experience?
Yeah, I think we definitely learned some lessons this year, Kiers, and fairly open in saying that injuries were higher than they ever have been, I think. I think coaches, like I said earlier, it's probably why I'm quite strong on it, that you can't just go straight back into your normal program. It can't be that we've been off for X amount of months, but we're just going to resume a normal week that we had the week before things went into lockdown or whatever. So really calculate the players, even if you think they can do more and they'll be asking for more. Just you have to get this sense of feel as when's enough is enough in that session. So and also what Joe said about rotation of players in games, that's going to be key, because the amount of games that come thick and fast, and they're trying to cram league games in week after week after training for 4 weeks. If you're brave enough to rotate your players, even some of your best players, then that's going to give you, a bit of freshness to them players, and able to and hopefully stop an injury within a few weeks. Look, I know we're coming, or I'm coming a little bit of a downer and saying, look, don't overtrain them. That's not the case. You've got to work them hard, but just for the first few weeks at least, please just put your foot off the gas and just ease them into it, slowly.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you're professional head of performance, coming from professional sport, and have worked at all different levels, different clubs, different sports. People would think that when they're down in a GA club that, we need to do more, we need to get them fitter, I'm worried and stuff. But like, a person like yourself is then actually saying, well, no, you don't. Like, the best way, like, soon ripe, soon rotten. If you want to get them fit really fast, you will get breakdowns, you get players getting injuries, everything like that, especially this season. So you're saying, like, take it slowly, build up slowly, and don't worry, you'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have the players that come back really fit, then brilliant. Then you can still take your time because they're fit. They're not gonna lose. And if you've got players that come back who are really out of shape, then you can't push them too hard anyway because they will break. So either way, you've got to find that balance for both sets of cohorts. And then the ones in the middle that have come back okay, then they can slot into the program. So just first 2 weeks, get your key principles that you want to get out of it. What style of play do you want to play? Make sure you improve them physically, aerobically. Make sure you add on to whatever aerobic base they've got already and other fitness stuff. And just make sure from week 3, they can go into a relatively normal week 3 pre-season where you've got transfer games, you've got principal games. You can go into some games with keepers and overload some game scenarios. So that would be my advice for the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I think that's brilliant advice to get and a good place to finish. Okay, thank you, Ross. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, listener, for tuning in, and hope to see you again for the next 40 episodes, at which point, Joe, I'll probably be off in Barbados, enjoying the fruits of Daily Sports Science business, and you'll probably be running it for me at that stage. So
I will, Ciaran, yeah.
No problem. Hopefully.
Yeah. I think he's pitched himself well today. I think if you tuned in today, you wouldn't know who the boss was.
That's the way we like it, delegation. Okay, so any listeners out there, head over to dailysportscience.com where you can sign up for our coaching membership and get access to all the information that we spoke about, and also Joe's football practices and games e-booklet and Ross's yearly planner as well. Really brilliant resources to have, and you can access them on the products page of dailysportscience.com. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Ciaran. Thanks, boss.